All right, Shalom. All praise goes to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakwadash. The bonus goes into the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that have taught me the truth, and much love and peace and blessings goes out to all the hopeful elect that are teaching the word of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai. So this lesson is going to be regarding the topic of how this famous statue, which brothers have been knowing about, and we really use to exemplify a lot of scriptures. Here's the image of it right here. To exemplify the scriptures is being removed. It's called the Roosevelt, the equestrian statue of Theodore Roosevelt, right? And it depicts here, you can see this Edomite, Theodore Roosevelt, which he was the Edomite president about 100 years ago, on top of a horse. And on each side of him, flanking him, was a so-called Native American, and on the other side, so-called black man, which the so-called black man and the Native American would be Israelites. So what it shows you is kind of like a twisting of the true nature and really what is supposed to be on the earth. Because the current time, and I should say what's supposed to be, is that these Israelites should be on horses with the Edomite on the ground as a servant, but it's mixed up. You see what I'm saying? It's a role reversal, if you will, because it says here in the book of Ecclesiastes 10, it says, "I have seen servants upon horses and princes walking as servants upon the earth." And why are servants upon horses? Because horses represent a position of power. Usually, the person that would tend to the horse and the horsemen, that person would be in servitude. Okay, so, and that's how Israel had all the other nations for a millennia. When King David went about conquering the nations, when King Solomon set up his officers, we had the other nations play remedial roles and made them hewers of wood and so forth, like the scriptures say. Like, cause look at this. This is in the book of 1 Kings 9 and 19. This was the order Solomon had. It says, "And Solomon built Gezer and Beth Horon and Nether, and Beth Horon the Nether, and Baalath and Tadmor in the wilderness in the land, and all the cities of store that Solomon had, and cities for his chariots and cities for his horsemen, and that which Solomon desired to build in Jerusalem, and in Lebanon, and in all the land of his dominion." And all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, which were not of the children of Israel, their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel also were not able to utterly destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service until this day. And that tribute of bond service was slavery. So the other nations which weren't Israelites, they made slaves, and that word for bond service is aibad. So they had remedial tasks like drawing water, like tending the flocks of our nation. You see what I'm saying? That's what they had to do. So if you go back, it says, "But to the children of Israel did Solomon make no bondmen, but they were men of war, and his servants, and his princes, and his captains, and his." But when it says servants here for the servants of Solomon, that same word pops up, which is Ibad. But they were Solomon's servants. We didn't serve the other nations. We served the Israelite king. It says, "And his princes and his captains and rulers of his chariots and his horsemen. These were the chief of the officers that were over Solomon's work, 550, which bear rule over the people that wrought in the work. See? So we bore rule during that time. We told the other nations what to do, how to fix this, build that, build this, build that, destruct this, cut those trees down. You see what I'm saying? Gather those resources over here. We were telling the heathens what to do. But because of our iniquity, this is why we have this role reversal, 2,000 plus years later after the fact, So I'm going to read this, go back to this article and read it. This is the New York City's Natural History Museum has removed a Theodore Roosevelt statue. The American Museum of Natural History in New York quietly began removing a controversial statue of former President Theodore Roosevelt on Thursday night in the final chapter of a saga that has stretched for nearly a year and a half. By Thursday, only scaffolding and tarp remained. The relocation of the equestrian statue from the front steps of the American Museum of Natural History began Tuesday. So let's get down, go to some points. Blah, 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 blah. It says the bronze statue, officially named Equestrian statue of Theodore Roosevelt, has towered outside the museum's entrance for some 80 years and became a source of local and national debate in recent years. It depicts the former New York governor and 26th U.S. president sitting on a horse flanked by two shirtless, unnamed men. One is Native American, the other is of African descent. Now, I mentioned the Native American, according to the scriptures, he will be a Gadite. And the one of African descent, more than likely, will be the tribe of Judah. Because, Judah was snatched up from the western shores of Africa because we had fled there after our nation was stripped from us from the Romans. Our land and so forth, So, let me turn off my notifications. Hold on. Salakia, brothers. Got a text. So, going back here, it says, but it adds that the design itself communicates a racial hierarchy that the museum and members of the public have long found disturbing. And that's bullshit. See, because the only members of the public that found this disturbing was the Israelites in the spirit. Because the Edomites, they knew well and fair. When you look a lot of these old articles up and how Esau was dealing at the time, they had no problem with racism. It's only in the recent years that you got Edomites coming out trying to play the picture of a good guy, because all these Edomites from New York all the way down south to fucking Georgia somewhere were racist, and they did not care about the impoverished position that the Israelites suffered. Now, for those that sincerely cared, they might have been Israelites themselves, but for the most part, all these so-called white people from the 1600s on down to the early movements, they got to enjoy the fruits of having Israelites in slavery. So they didn't have no care about that. They didn't care. Only reason why they started caring is because the brainwashing programming from the CIA with all that counterculture and all that bullshit going on, that flower child shit in the late 60s and 70s. But before that, these Edomites, it was just second nature to them to view so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as less than them. It's like breathing air to them. You know what I'm saying? So I got this article pulled up about the, some of Roosevelt's views, right? So if you go here, it says how Teddy Roosevelt's belief in a racial hierarchy shaped his policies. It says Theodore Roosevelt, known for his boundless energy and brash, adventurous spirit, possessed one of the biggest personalities of any American president. But he once said it is a quality of strong natures that their failings, like their virtues, should stand out in bold relief. That could certainly be said of the 26th president, whose complex legacy includes not just his achievements as a blah, 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 blah. He also believed firmly in the existence of racial hierarchy, meaning what? He was a racist. He believed that Edomites was better than everyone else. As Edomites should. You go for it, Esau. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But the facts of the matter is that Israel is the superior people. We are the great among the nations, okay? chosen by Yahweh Bashim Havashai to be great. Okay? Above all nations. See, Deuteronomy 14:2. For thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. And who Yahweh Bashim Havashai was talking to was the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. And at this time, that's what not we were not known as this. We were the 12 tribes of Israel. It says, and the Lord hath chosen thee to be a peculiar people unto himself above all the nations that are upon the earth. So we above the so-called white man and every other race for that matter, be it Arabs, all of that. We're above all the people. It says, which shaped his attitude. So going back, it says he also believed firmly in the racial of a racial hierarchy which shaped his attitudes on race relations, land rights, American imperialism, and the emerging and disturbing science of eugenics. You see, and eugenics was a wicked philosophy, man. That the founders of it, the people that was into that, these Edomite scientists, basically believe if you wasn't an Edomite, blue-eyed, blonde-haired Edomite, you are a human reed meant to be bred out, destroyed. You see what I'm saying? So we see how basically Esau's view of superiority of himself, it leads to how he treats all other people, be it, like American imperialism. That's why he gets involved. That's why Esau gets involved in all these other countries' conflicts. He's setting up presidents and so forth, overthrowing the rulers and all that. You know why? Because he believes he's better. Now they do it under the blanket of democracy, but really their true intent is because they believe, that every other quote unquote brown people is less than them. You see? So I'm skipping down. It says Roosevelt believed fundamentally that American greatness came from its rule by racially superior white men of European descent. And ain't that the furthest thing from the truth? Because Yahweh Bashim Shai has said otherwise, because this is Daniel 4:17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men. So it's the Most High dictating the events and actions on earth. It has nothing to do with you devils. It says, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basis of men. And the base means low level, meaning Esau is what? A low level thinker, low level in culture, low level in hygiene. You see what I'm saying? But, Yahweh Shemel Shai raised this guy up. He raised this guy up to be able to do the things he has. So Esau basically, from the time that he was released out of bondage, when he was in the point of being a slave in Europe, right after the Middle Ages, raised him up from that state, that caveman-like state, and turned him into basically a smart dummy till he started coming up with different technology and so forth, like the car, all these other different things. And a lot of inventions came from Jake, but Esau has been, maneuvering with his policies on the left hand. He's been getting down with that knowledge too, like, his espionage and, drones and all that, all these different things. But you got to understand, well, what this devil doesn't understand is that it comes from the Most High first. So if you go here, Job chapter 12 and verse 16, it says, with him is strength and wisdom, and the deceived and the deceiver are his. And this is speaking about Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. So with him is strength and wisdom. He gives nations strength, and he makes nations wise. And he can do the opposite. He can make them weak and make them foolish. So if you go down here, Job 12 and verse 23 says, he increaseth the nations and destroyeth them. So the fact that America has been able to reach its pinnacle, got victorious in World War I, World War II, all these different multinational corporations that come and do business with America, the enslavement of the Israelites that boosted the American economy, like, years and years ahead of all other economies, all that free labor. You see what I'm saying? This was Yahweh Bashim Yahushai increasing America. He did this. It says, and destroyed them. He enlarged the nations and straightened them again. He taketh away the heart, and this is what Yahweh Bashim Yahushai is going to do. He taketh away the heart of the chief of the people of the earth. And that's meaning the Lord takes away their mind. Because Esau, he ain't going to be boasting. You know, he's not going to have any secret Illuminati councils that he's funneling all his wisdom in the kingdom, man. He's not going to have that. Because the Lord is going to take away their heart, their mind, to be able to, you know, execute all this wickedness and prosper in what they do. It says, and causeth them to wander in a wilderness where there is no way. They grope in the dark without light, and he maketh them to stagger like a drunken man. And that's what happened when Rome fell. When these Edomites fell in Rome, and when the Edomites were thrown out of their own land in the land of Edom, they were in the caves and desolate lands of Europe, Eastern Europe, wandering like fucking cavemen, man, eating raw meat and all kind of crazy shit. You see what I'm saying? So there's no room for these devils to boast, but you see, that's a history they want to cover up. They only paint themselves in the light as to, you know, so that where they're viewed favorably. You see what I'm saying? So this is, I got this Wikipedia article about scientific racism pulled up. It says scientific racism, sometimes termed biological racism, is a pseudoscientific. So here in 2022, they even, you know, admit that this is pseudoscience, because Lord knows that Esau is a fucking, these so-called white people don't got it, man. Just put it like that. Melanin, Fox News. Hold on.
It's kind of weird that at the very moment that most of the country lives in terror, that anything you say can be twisted into the R word and you get fired and canceled and never heard from again. We're all exquisitely...
You brothers can look this up on your own time, because I'm actually trying to find the video where Tucker Carlson was breaking down how the melanin, which is not really the melanin, it's really from Yahweh Shem Shai, but basically he was saying how, you know, the genetic difference between so-called black people and white people makes us more spiritually, physically, and mentally superior, man. So I mean, that's out there. It says scientific racism, sometimes termed biological racism, is the pseudoscientific belief that empirical evidence exists to support or justify racism, racial inferiority, or racial superiority. And this is a philosophy that Esau was brewing up from the 1600s all the way until, you know, about the early 1900s, where that was his justification. And he was basically trying to come up with a science that would justify his wickedness. You see what I'm saying? So you go down. It says scientific racism was common during the period from the 1600s to the end of World War II. Since the second half of the 20th century, and you got to think about it. That period of time, that's about 300 years. And think about the amount of conquest and pillaging that those so-called European nations was doing at that time. It was all fueled by scientific racism. Or we're white, because we're white men. We get to go and conquer you and blah, blah, blah. It's all BS. Because it says, go to a few scriptures. Psalm 73 in verse 9, it says, they set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walketh through the earth. And that's speaking of Esau. What their tongue represents their philosophies, the things that they, you know, sit there and collude together. They conspire and come up with this shit after doing mountains of cocaine and sacrificing babies. And they come up with these wicked philosophies through these evil spirits, man. But this is Esau. This is why, so-called white superiority, that lie was pushed throughout the earth. That's why the lie that it's okay to be a homosexual is pushed through the earth. This is why you have feminism, which exalts the woman over the man. When Yahweh Shem Yahshai from the beginning gave man dominion over the earth, including the woman. You see, that's why that is through the earth. That's why fractional reserve banking is through the earth. Well, all these countries have a central bank that is just basically loaning out money and putting their people in debt and in slavery. All these different things are first based on an idea, a thought. Because you got to think, thoughts and manipulating people's minds is one of the strongest ways to get influence. Because how was the world created? It was spoken into existence. It came from a word. Esau understands that power. So before he moves with action, before he comes in with his sword, he sets the ground through brainwashing the people. You see what I'm saying? And that's how he spoils nations. So this is Psalm 57 and 2, because what these damn devils didn't count on was the truth being poured throughout the earth. Because the nation of Israel, pursuant to Ezekiel the 37th chapter, is basically rising up. Yahweh Shem Yahshai put us in a base state when we were in slavery, picking cotton, but now the Lord is rising us up with truth. And a lot of these articles and every so forth is going out that is really dismantling the lies of Esau. That's why he had to remove all these statues and so forth. He has to cover up. He's covering up his tracks. He's trying to, because the truth is out. So this is Psalm 57 and 2. I will cry unto the Most High, until the power Most High. And that power Most High is Yahweh. And we cry unto Yahweh at this time through Yahweh Shai. Unto God that performeth all things for me. He shall send from heaven and save me from the reproach of him that will swallow me up. And that's Esau, man. And his reproach is towards us. He paints us as criminals, thugs. That's why we all deep in the prison system, man. That's because that's Esau's plans to swallow us up. But it says the Lord is going to send from heaven. He's sending his truth. It says, Salah, the Most High shall send forth his mercy and his truth. See? So that's what's defeating this devil, man. That's what's casting him down. Okay? Is the truth. So all praises goes to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Shalom.